Hello and welcome to Good Morning Europe and to our new look, new format, new digest of all that's happening around Europe and across the world. Packed full of new features like Remind and Rewind, that's our glance back at key moments in history, and Number of the Day, a figure that I'm sure you'll find surprising, and there are lots of other new additions too. But first, let's take a look at the headlines.
The UK, US, EU and Canada issue coordinated sanctions against Belarus in response to the forced landing of a Ryanair flight and the detention of an opposition activist. Voting continues in Ethiopia's delayed parliamentary elections amid conflict and a humanitarian crisis in the country's northern Tigray.
Saying we will no longer only sanction individuals but also areas of the economy which are important to the regime. We want to make Lukashenko's regime run dry financially. Oil, tobacco and potash, a salt used in fertiliser, which is a big source of foreign currency for Belarus, they're all being targeted. EU banks will also be banned from offering loans or investment services. Journalist Roman Protasevich and his girlfriend Sofia Sapega were detained last month after being hauled off a Ryanair flight which had been diverted to Minsk en route to Vilnius.
The targeted Belarusian companies and individuals are subject to an asset freeze. And at the same time, EU citizens and companies are forbidden from doing any business with them. These new measures are aiming at increasing pressure on Lukashenko in order to stop further repression and open a dialogue with the broader society. According to an EU diplomat, this is the first time that the EU is endorsing such an extended raft of sanctions since 2014 and the EU sanctions against Russia over Ukraine. Efi Koutsakosta, Euronews, Luxembourg.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen continues her COVID recovery tour in Italy today. She'll give the go-ahead to the country receiving its share of the €750 billion kitty set up to help the bloc's 27 countries recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Alberto De Filippis has more.
Von der Leyen will meet with Italian Premier Mario Draghi at Rome's iconic Cinecittà Cinema Studios. Italy is due to spend over €220 billion in EU funds to modernize the country's economy, while also making it greener as it attempts to recover from its biggest peacetime recession. Rome is no stranger to reform promises, but this time it really seems to be the last opportunity for the country, and Draghi certainly won't want to miss it. Reforms to cut red tape and speed up a snail-paced justice system are key parts of the plan. And with Italy getting the biggest single chunk of the EU's €750 billion Next Generation EU Recovery Fund, it is the best chance for a generation to boost its stagnating economy. Final approval by the European Council is likely due next week by the bloc's economic and finance ministers, with the first disbursement of funds expected by July in the amount of 13% of the money provided for in the plan. Alberto De Filippis, Brussels.
Voting continued well into the night in Ethiopia's parliamentary elections, which have been delayed from last year. In more than 100 of the country's 547 constituencies, polls are not even due to open because of logistical or security problems. The elections are major tests for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, whose rise to power initially signalled a break with authoritarian rule, but who has since waged war in the Tigray region and whose party has been accused of election abuses. The head of one of the leading opposition parties, the Ethiopian Citizens for Social Justice, Bernard Negu, claims observers from his party have been kicked out of polling stations. International concern has been growing about the accusations that Ethiopia's ruling party is guilty of harassment, manipulation and threats of violence. It can take up to 10 days for the final results to be known.
Boris Johnson has said the UK will have to get used to the idea that they will need autumn booster jabs to deal with virus variants. He's also warned that 2021 will be a difficult year for international travel. However, he's now looking at the possibility of exempting those who've been fully vaccinated from having to quarantine after returning from amber list countries. The 2020 Tokyo Olympics will allow a maximum of 10,000 fans for all venues, but they'll not be allowed to cheer and they will have to wear masks. It's the newly announced COVID protocols which only allow stadiums to be half full to maintain social distancing. And organisers have warned that the competition could move behind closed doors if coronavirus infections surge.
Good morning, and just in case you hadn't noticed by now, the Euros are well and truly in full swing, with games coming thick and fast and the group stages coming to an end. Goals from former Manchester United winger Memphis Depay and former Liverpool midfielder Jorginho Wijnaldum helped group leaders the Netherlands outclass North Macedonia 3-0 to make it 3 wins from 3 in this year's competition. Elsewhere, Austria produced a stunning performance to edge out Ukraine by the narrowest of margins. Christoph Baumgartner's close-range finish proved to be the difference between the two sides, and this is actually the first time Austria has reached the knockout stages of the European Championship. Their next opponents will be tough, though, as Franco Foda's men will next face Italy at Wembley on Saturday. In Group B, Andreas Christensen and Joachim Melles scored late goals to give Denmark an emphatic 4-1 victory over Russia and a spot in the round of 16. This win sees Christian Eriksen's teammates finish 6 points behind Belgium following their convincing 2-0 win over Finland in St. Petersburg. Later on today, England will be looking to top Group D when they lock horns with the Czech Republic on home soil. Both teams claimed a point from their most recent encounters, and although Gareth Southgate's men failed to find the back of the net against Scotland, Czech Republic coach Jaroslav Silavi remains cautious regarding England's strike force and one man in particular.
Harry Kane is an excellent striker. He is very smart and a very good goal scorer. We want to do the same as when we won in Prague 2-1 against England in a Euro 2020 qualifier 2 years ago. We do not want to leave him alone. We need to have 2 men on him. He manages to score even when we defend very well against him. But I believe that we will be strong enough to neutralise his threat tomorrow.
In Group D's other game, Croatia and Scotland will battle it out at Hampden Park. And although neither team has managed to win a game yet, everything is still possible, as in addition to the top 2 teams in each of the 6 groups, well, the 4 best third-place finishers will also qualify for the round of 16.
Still to come on Good Morning Europe, a century of Northern Ireland. Belfast City Hall will today mark the 100th anniversary of the first sitting of its devolved parliament, a divisive commemoration amid renewed sectarian tensions over Brexit.
This Tuesday on Euronews.
How can we make our food chain truly sustainable? Solutions range from using less pesticides, to better farm animal welfare, to less polluting production processes, to the reduction of food waste. Farm to Fork takes you to discover European initiatives to produce healthier food and reduce the impact on the environment. Farm to Fork on Euronews and Euronews.com.
Als nossos também são. aun comprendiendo los motivos del rechazo, el Gobierno de España ha optado por abrir paso a la reconciliación, al reencuentro.
This Friday on Euronews.
Unreported Europe takes you across the continent, to its heart and to its depths. Meet those who make up Europe. Farmers, workers, business owners, refugees, women, men, families. Unreported Europe brings you their stories. No stone is left unturned, no corner unexplored. Unreported Europe on Euronews and Euronews.com.
Welcome back. Now, across the European Union, we've increasingly seen how big tech companies are fast becoming no strangers to antitrust investigations, particularly because of the dominance that they enjoy over the market. Now, a new law passed in Germany has recently strengthened the authorities' position to act against these big players, the likes of Facebook, Amazon, Google, and Apple. And on Monday, Germany's Federal Antitrust Authority announced it would be launching an investigation into Apple after it received various complaints about Apple's potentially anti-competitive business practices. The authority said they would examine whether the US giant has been unfairly dominating the market and has been unfairly stifling the ability of its rivals to operate. This investigation will examine a number of things. Firstly, the iOS operating system that many of us will be familiar with on our iPhones. It will also examine, they said, Amazon's technological and financial resources, including the ability to access the personal and private data of its users. But something else this investigation will look at particularly is the App Store, and whether this influences how third parties and other companies have to operate, and whether they have to align with the App Store and Apple's operating system. Now, in response to this, the US tech company has said that they welcome an open dialogue with the German regulators. And they also pointed to the fact that they provide innovation and thousands of jobs in Germany because of the company's size. But of course, this is not the first time that we've seen Apple and indeed other big tech companies being challenged when it comes to their competitive and business models. For example, the EU also launching an investigation when it comes to the music streaming service. And this investigation seems to be just the latest example of how the bloc is trying to rein in the market dominance that these big tech companies enjoy.
A century of Northern Ireland. A ceremony will take place at Belfast City Hall today to mark the 100th anniversary of the first sitting of the Northern Ireland Parliament. A divisive commemoration amidst renewed sectarian tensions over Brexit. Ken Murray reports now from Belfast.
This is Belfast City Hall. It was here on June 22nd, 1921 that the controversial Northern Ireland Parliament sat for the first time after the British government divided the island of Ireland. The so-called Protestant Parliament for Protestant people discriminated against Irish Catholics, with many observers saying it did not serve all of the people well.
People would have to look back, and it's one for the historians, and to say that it was mishandled. There should have been a massive effort to integrate. There should have been a massive effort to promote rights and respect along the way, which simply didn't happen. The Parliament at Stormont, as you say, for 50 years was based entirely on unionist rule.
In 1932, the Parliament moved to the impressive Stormont building outside Belfast. But despite an impressive new home, decisions taken here contributed to the deliberate and repeated discrimination against Northern Irish Catholics. By the late 1960s, those same pro-Irish unity Catholics couldn't take any more, and war broke out. It was to last for just over 25 years, costing close on 3,500 lives. With major demographic changes happening in Northern Ireland, the question now is, how long can this Parliament in its current form last?
The truth is that it's pretty secure partition at any rate for the next several years. But after that, partly because we don't know what will happen with Scotland as much as anything else, then there is a level of greater uncertainty. There is really no short-term crisis here. An Irish government recovering from COVID is not going to take on the wonderful people in Northern Ireland and all the problems they bring.
The Northern Ireland Parliament has had numerous stops and starts since 1921, with many people questioning as to whether or not it has served the people here anyway well. However, with the number of Irish Catholics expected to surpass the number of British Protestants here in the coming years, followed by an expected push for a unification referendum, the likelihood is that this Parliament will not celebrate its 200th anniversary in 100 years' time. Only time will tell. This is Ken Murray for Euronews, Stormont in Northern Ireland.
From today, the 22nd of June, France is updating its COVID vaccination certificate in order to make it in harmony with the wider EU COVID vaccination certificate. Meanwhile, in Italy, the midnight curfew is now cancelled and the country is ready to welcome tourists from more countries. Europe is slowly but surely opening up for tourists. According to the European Travel Commission, more than 70% of Europeans plan trips in the next 6 months, and most of them think that the certificate will facilitate the travel. According to the European Commission, this certificate should be fully up and running starting from the 1st of July across the European Union. The EU tourism industry, which employs more than 13 million people, was estimated to be losing around 1 billion euros per month during this year of the COVID-19 crisis. This is, of course, the result of all the travel bans across Europe. When it comes to the global tourism sector, the industry was losing more than 1 trillion euros in revenues over the whole 2020. That year happened to be the worst year for the world of tourism.
Carmen and Angel's worst nightmare is just a few metres away from their home. The noise from some of the thousands of terraces authorised by Madrid City Council due to the pandemic means they can't open their window, even on a hot summer night. We're constantly annoyed because we're talking to the neighbours, wondering if we have to go here, if we have to protest about this, if we have to write to the town hall. In other words, we're constantly on the lookout all day long, and then all night. I've always had problems with insomnia, but lately it's become a scandal. This isn't the only inconvenience faced by residents in the capital. For me, the general problem is the issue of parking, because I live around here. I park around here, and it's true that maybe now in these blocks there are around 150 fewer parking spaces. However, because of the loss of income many have faced, bar and restaurant owners see this as a positive, at least for now. For those of us who didn't have a terrace, until the losses we have had due to the pandemic are recovered, I think this would be fair. Some residents are a little more supportive. They need to establish a maximum occupancy of the terraces and regulate the opening hours. People have been flocking to these terraces since the end of the curfew in Spain in May. From this Monday, the neighbours may have to endure some more noise in the early hours because Madrid's nightlife venues will stay open until 3 a.m. In Madrid, neighbourhood associations have already protested against the situation that's being experienced in other European cities such as Paris, Rome and Barcelona. The council insists it's working on a regulation which could reduce the number of bars and restaurants. Maybe we need to establish a maximum percentage per street, per neighbourhood or per avenue, and that is precisely what the technical services are studying now. Until August the 31st, new businesses in the Spanish capital can apply for permission to occupy public parking spaces next to pavements and buildings.
It's perfect that this beautiful bit of design should just be nature's masterpiece, the forest.
In the last 2 years, I think we've all shifted our attitude towards trees, towards nature, not least just because we've paid attention. And I think the forest has taken on a very different meaning over those 2 years.
We suddenly realise that actually the survival of the planet and all our businesses and all our lives depends on allowing nature to have its voice and to thrive. And I think COVID is a kind of possible portal to a world where people move faster to do those things that make all of us safe and happy. And this year, exactly, particularly, the UK is in charge of the G7 and of the climate conference in Glasgow. So we really believe that if this could be a massive acceleration towards justice and climate justice, the world will be up for a much better decade.